I started here in Lake Elsinore in 2023, and quite quickly I saw we had a big PR issue. On social media, the residents would slam us. The lake is green, it smells, we have fish die-offs, and so everything we've done over the years, we've been wanting to be very transparent with our residents and the public, and it's videos like that we're really trying to show the public that the lake is different, it's changing, and it's evolving. Every day we're doing new projects on the lake and we're improving day by day. This isn't an overnight thing. This is 40, 50 years of the upper watershed, ag, all the different discharge in the lake. It's going to take time to get us to the point that we're happy. And so every day we work on this here at the City of Lake Elsinore. And so videos like that and our social media channels are really important to us because we still get residents that'll say, oh, I'll never go down there, but they haven't been down in 20 years. What we're starting to see is that narrative is changing. We have residents that are fighting on social media because someone will post a photo of how great the lake looks, and then someone else says, oh no, that's AI. You know, the lake is still green, it still smells. And so it's for us at City Hall, it's wonderful. We love seeing those narratives because the residents that know the lake is changing, they're fighting for us. And that's the best person that we want. You know, as a city, we can only put out so much information, but we need our residents to really tell that story for us. I'll move on to my presentation. All right, so Lake Elsinore, 3,000 acres. It's a large lake. It's the largest lake in Southern California. And like we talked about, it is the bottom of the 780 square mile San Jacinto watershed. Everything ends up in Lake Elsinore. And there's no river once it hits the lake. We were just discussing earlier, it would have to get to 1265 above sea level for water to actually exit Lake Elsinore. So once it hits there, it is not going anywhere. And every day we are getting over 6 million gallons of treated water into the lake to help maintain our levels. Next slide, please. So here's a little bit of history for some people that didn't know. Back in the 1950s, the lake actually was completely dry. You could walk across the entire lake bottom. And so in the 1980s, the entire lake flooded everything south of us. So basically, you know, put a line right here, everything got flooded. And so in the late 80s, early 90s, they completed where you parked is the levee system. And so that levee system really brought the lake down to a manageable size and helped prevent the future flooding and then made it a lot more easy for us to maintain the level. And then over the years, we've done different things to help the lake heal itself. But as far back as 1994, Lake Elsinore was an impaired body of water. So this isn't something new. We've been working on this for a long, long time. Over the years, we've had massive fish die-off events, and we're talking in the neighborhood of 100 tons of fish dying. So not just a couple fish, we're talking about lake-wide. And then more recently, August 2022, the lake probably got its worst in 10, 20 years, and we had a massive algae bloom. And the algae bloom was so bad that the toxin levels got to a point where our city council decided to shut the lake down. And so for 6 months, from August 2022 to February of 2023, the lake was actually shut down. I started here in January 2023, and the city manager came into my office on day one, and he's like, you're gonna fix the lake. And I was like, okay. I came from Laguna Beach, so I know oceans. Lake were a little out of my wheelhouse, but I spent the first 8 months working on different projects. And then in August of 2023, our city council signed our first lake management plan, and that's what we're working off right now. Our lake management plan from the beginning is a roadmap approach. We're doing little projects and seeing how the lake responds. We're not spending 10 years on studying and building one project. We're doing little projects and seeing how that lake responds. First project that we did was hydrogen peroxide-based algicide. We wanted to see how the lake would respond, but we wanted to be environmentally friendly. So the hydrogen peroxide breaks down right away. We're not left with anything in the lake. That was the first project. The first major project that we did was our first pilot nanobubble barge. Can I get next slide, please? Oh, I put this in as a just to see where we came from. And I make sure I always put the date. So that was 2018. You can see how green and soup-like the lake used to be. Next, okay, here we go. So in August, like I said, we passed our first lake management plan. And the biggest project that we did was our first nanobubble barge. This nanobubble barge was delivered to us in December of 2023. It went live February 6th of 2024. A small project when you look at Lake Elsinore at 3,000 acres. This first barge was equipped with oxygen and ozone injection, nanobubbles. And the ozone was something new, and we wanted to see how it would work. And then that came Eric's group on working through the regulatory process. Some of the other things I mentioned already, the algicide treatments, and then another project that we're working on is Phoslock. So we actually have an update today. John Rudolph and I met with Eric's staff over at the regional board, and yesterday we got final sign-off that we can move forward on lake-wide Phoslock application. So yesterday was a big win for us. In addition to that, they also signed off on us on ozone. So in the near future, we'll be able to do ozone injections into the lake. So this week was a big week for us. This is a little bit of background on that first nanobubble pilot. 2,400 gallons, so we're pumping 2,400 gallons and we're putting almost 500 pounds of oxygen in the lake each day. So still very small when you look at Lake Elsinore. In addition to this barge, we wanted to know what was going on in the lake at all times. So part of this project, we also installed 5 monitoring buoys around the barge. This is real-time data that Moliere, our partner, has access, and I have access in my office as well. So every day coming in, I can see what the ORP levels are, what the dissolved oxygen levels are. We can see in real time what that barge was doing. This was super important to us because we wanted to know long-term how that barge would react with the lake. In addition to that, before the barge was installed, in November of 2023, we had 200 acres around the barge mapped. And so they came in with a boat and with sonar mapped the bottom of the lake. And we're looking at the organic material at the bottom of the lake. Next slide, please. So within the first 5 months of this pilot barge, and you can see this is where the barge is at the lake. It's on the east side of the lake, kind of in the middle. Really quickly, we saw changes in dissolved oxygen with those 5 monitoring buoys, and then we also saw changes in ORP. ORP is a measure of a body of water to clean itself. And then with that hardness map, we saw changes in the lake bottom. Next slide, please. So this goes in a little bit more about the hardness mapping. I mentioned the first time we did it was November 2023. The original plan for the hardness mapping is we'd wait a year, but I got a little too antsy and wanted to see what was going on, so we kind of jumped that up by 6 months. And so we came back in June 2024, and we wanted to see what was going on. What we want to see on this next slide is darker colors. Those darker colors indicate a sandy, rocky bottom. That's healthy. What we don't want to see is the yellow, which indicates muck, organic material. The best way that I tell or teach the public and our city council is if you think about when you used to walk into a lake and you get that mud between your toes, that's what we don't want. All right, we want that sandy, rocky bottom. If I can get the next slide, please. So the image on the left, again, before we did the nanobubble project, November, and then 150 days after the first pilot went in. It's hard to see at this scale, but what I want you to take note is on the left, down the middle, you're seeing a lot of yellow. And that's that organic material. That's dying fish, dying algae. And then on the right-hand side, you kind of see that band is gone. You still see a little bit of yellow, but you can see a drastic reduction in the yellow on the right-hand side. So we took this as nothing else could make this change. So the year that we installed the pilot barge, we had a lot of rain. And so we saw increases in clarity in the lake. But increases in water is not going to make physical changes to the bottom of the lake. And so it was this data point that we were like, okay, it's really doing what it should be, or what we thought it was going to do. Next slide, please. October 2024, we had the whole lake mapped. And you could see, I know it's hard on this scale, but you could see in the entire lake, we're seeing less and less of that yellow zones. And so the entire lake is starting to see changes. We're not there yet. We still have a lot to do, a long way to go. But lake-wide, we're starting to see a reduction in that organic material at the bottom of the lake. Next slide, please. So it was that hardness map data, the data we had from our monitoring buoys that I took to City Council in June of 2024. And I said, hey, it's working. We want to scale up a little bit more, because if you remember, this is a roadmap approach, little projects to see how the lake would respond. So June 2024, Council signed off on our second big project. We did use $1.5 million from the state of California, which as of last week, we finally got that reimbursed, so that was really nice to get that check. And so this project, 2 separate barges. These barges were drastically different than the pilot barge. If you remember, the pilot barge pumps 2,400 gallons per minute. Each one of these barges pumps 4,500 gallons per minute. So quite a bit larger. And each one of these barges injects 2,500 pounds of oxygen per day. So we're pumping a lot of oxygen with these 2 barges. With the 3 barges working, we're up to 5,500 pounds per day of oxygen injection. Because we used $1.5 million from the state, we had to submit a very large comprehensive report. Thanks to our partners at GEI, we submitted this. And some of the data and some of the graphs came from their GEI report. And what I love about this report is they used so many different data sets. It wasn't just their data set. We used EVMWD sondes, which are in the lake. We used city data from our Moliere sondes. We used LEMS data, TMDL data, and so with all of those data sets, you start to see a trend that oxygen in the lake is increasing. So this kind of gives you a little bit of where everything is in the lake. The first pilot barge was very strategic on where we put it. I wanted the residents of Lake Elsinore to see this every single day. And so we put it on Lake Shore, one of our busiest roads that's right along the lake. In addition to that, we are limited because each one of these barges is tied to the shore with power. And so I'm limited on what sites the city owns and how expensive it is to put the infrastructure in there. So this one was very strategic because I wanted the public to see it. Barges 2 and 3, so barge number 2 is at Launch Point. It's our biggest recreation destination, so it was really important also to put it there. The other benefit of putting it at Launch Point is I have a dock there. And so I can take the public, I can take reporters out on the dock, and they can be 50 feet away from the barge. So strategically also very important because we want the public to see this. We want people to know what's going on in the lake. The third barge is at Elm Grove Beach, which is probably the closest barge to us right now. It's just right out here on this side of the lake. Again, that was a strategic idea because that's where we get the 6 million gallons, of water from EVMWD. And we wanted to see how that barge would react with those daily input of 6 million gallons of water. Also to take note on this slide right here is the Lakeshore and Grand sondes, which are essentially in the middle of the lake. And then if we go to the next slide, and thank you to GEI, Chris, for putting these graphs together. I gave you credit, Chris. And what we're seeing here is after our second and third barges went live. And so they went live in October of 2024. The first one, I believe it was October 13th and maybe October 16th or 17th. But you can really see almost drastic increases in dissolved oxygen in the lake. And what was important, if you can go back one more time, one slide please. The Lakeshore and Grand is where Chris got this data sets from. But if you see where the barges are, there's no barge close to it. So we're not showing that right at the discharge point of the barge you're seeing increases, because hopefully we would see that. But we're seeing increases in dissolved oxygen quite a way from the barges. And that was really good to see. We're seeing that the nanobubbles are moving through the lake. And nanobubbles are new. And there's not everything figured out yet. There's still a lot to be known of how they travel. The great thing about the nanobubbles is they're naturally buoyant. So they're gonna stay in the water column longer. And the way I explain this to people is when you go to the swimming pool, you go at the bottom, you blow a bubble, that bubble rises really fast and goes into the atmosphere. These nanobubbles are naturally buoyant, so they are gonna stay in the water column longer. It's not, and this is the hard concept, it's not the oxygen that are inside the nanobubbles. The nanobubbles attract oxygen around them. And so as the nanobubbles are going through the water column, they've got oxygen bubbles around them. And that's what's allowing this oxygen to travel around the entire lake. And what we're doing right now to further test how the nanobubbles are traveling, GEI is testing 29 different sites in the lake in the water column almost at the bottom of the lake for dissolved oxygen levels. And we are seeing increases in dissolved oxygen around the entire lake. We know from modeling that Lake Elsinore mixes counterclockwise. And you can see on the data points that once these, the lake water hits a barge, downstream of the barge, the dissolved oxygen is increasing. So you can follow the nanobubbles around the lake from the data points that we have. Next slide, please, and go one more. So this is some of the DO averages that GEI came up with in their report. And you can see, I love this because they put the red dotted line so you can see when the pilot barge was installed, and then you can see when the following two other barges were installed. So you can see that DO levels are quite a bit larger or increased over the lake after the different barges were installed. And then the image on the right, we just love that image, showing the public that image from what they're used to seeing in Lake Elsinore is drastically different. Next slide, please. So the other thing that I believe Eric talked about too, one of the things that drive algae blooms is nitrogen and phosphorus. And so it's two data points that we really look at a lot is the total nitrogen levels in the lake and total phosphorus levels. And so again, you're seeing drastic drops in nitrogen levels on this graph after the two Moliere nanobubble barges were installed. And we just got the TMDL 2025 offset credit report. I'm still going through it, just got delivered this week, but we're seeing sustained drops in phosphorus and in nitrogen. So it's great to see over a whole year that the two barges have been operating, we're seeing sustained drops in nitrogen. Next slide, please. So same thing here on phosphorus. It's not as drastic drop on the phosphorus, but we are seeing decreases in phosphorus. So what's next for Lake Elsinore? So we've been really working hard on the lake, but we're also working with our regional partners at the state, local, and the federal government. And so over the last 2 years, we've really hit hard with our congressman that Lake Elsinore is not just a recreational amenity for Lake Elsinore, it's regionally. And so 2 years it took us, but back in February, the president finally signed the last funding bill, and so we got $8 million from the federal government for federal appropriation to further our projects here at Lake Elsinore. And so kind of a recap, our first phase was 550 pounds per day. The phase 2 brought us to 5,500 pounds, and so right now we're in the final planning stages of our phase 3 of the nanobubble project. And what we're planning to do with that is we're actually going to, the pilot barge, we're going to sell that equipment back to Moliere. And if you remember, that one's the 550 pounds per day barge, and we're going to replace that with 5,000 pounds per day. So pretty much a drastic change. And that'll bring us up to 10,000 pounds per day of oxygen injection in Lake Elsinore. Some of the studies that we've done, when we look at long-term replacements for Lake Elsinore, is 15,000 pounds is where we're kind of circling is the number we need per day. And so this next phase will get us to 10,000, so we're inching closer to that goal of 15,000 pounds of oxygen per day. We're really also proud of all the work we've done on the planning side. Last October, we won the Helen Putnam Award. It's a statewide award for all cities, and we won it for environmental planning. So a really special award for us at the city level to be recognized at the state level on all the planning projects that we're doing. And a big thing that we did with this application is really talking about that roadmap approach, that we're really changing how cities do capital projects. A lot of cities will spend many years and build one project. This is very different. Because the lake changes every day, we needed to be dynamic with this project. And so instead of waiting 10 years and build one project, we're doing these little projects as we move along. Next slide. And so as the lake changes and improves, we're really trying to activate the lake. So right now, we just finalized an application for the second annual Hobie Cat. So the bottom, those are Hobie Cat sailboats, and they race them. And so this July, we'll have the second sailboat race. It's really cool. It's about 20 or 30 sailboats that'll be out on the lake racing. Really cool to see. We have a new yacht club coming to Lake Elsinore, and so they'll be doing children's programs, in addition to renting out sailboats, kayaks, stand-up paddleboarding. We really want the public to come back to Lake Elsinore. It's really important. We're doing all these things, investing into the lake. We need the public to realize it's a safe, great lake. Come back and recreate in Lake Elsinore. And then this May, we have 2 fishing derbies. And so we have the Dream Extreme Fishing Derby. Ben, is it on the 16th or 17th? The 16th. So Saturday, May 16th, we've got the fishing derby. And then the next day we come back and we have Carp Quest. And so Lake Elsinore is actually one of the only few lakes that you can actually do bow fishing on. And so we're encouraging anglers and bow fishermen to come out to our Carp Quest. As we all know, carp is an invasive species, so we're very happy for people to come and catch them. So that'll be really exciting. Last year was the first event, and it's always great to remove carp from a lake, so we're really excited for that. And so just a lot of momentum here in Lake Elsinore, and we couldn't do this without LESJWA, with all the partners, the regional partners, our partners at EBMWD and the Water Board, and so we're just really looking forward to all the great things that are coming to Lake Elsinore.